This is the I4CP Next Practices weekly call. If you're new to it, welcome. Please open up the chat if you haven't already. Let us know where you're joining from today. I saw folks from all around the United States. Also, we have an international audience, as we usually do. I saw folks from the UK, Canada, Mexico at the very least. So welcome to everyone. If you're not familiar with I4CP, we are the Institute for Corporate Productivity. We're a human capital research firm. We discover the people practices that drive high performance. We do that through our research primarily, where we look at all sorts of different HR practices, looking at what high performance companies do differently than low performers. We define that by revenue growth, market share, profitability, and customer satisfaction. So when we do a major study on DE&I practices, L&D, talent acquisition, whatever the topic might be, we're trying to tease out what HR practices those high performers are doing differently than low performers. And then we share that out to our member organizations in the form of reports, infographics, case studies, and a lot more. You see here just a small sampling of our member companies, member organizations that span really all market verticals, from banking to high tech, government, nonprofits, manufacturing, healthcare, you name it. They also span all different company sizes. You see some very large organizations like Amazon, 3M, Visa, and others, as well as some smaller names that maybe you're not as familiar with. We've also got a growing cohort of unicorn startup organizations that are growing fast. If you're with a member organization and joining us today, special welcome to you. Great to have you with us. And if you're not with a member organization but would like to learn more, just reach out to us, use our website, the contact form there, or reach out to any I4CP employee that you know. We'd be happy to share that information with you. My name is Tom Stone. I'm a senior research analyst here at I4CP, and I have the pleasure this week of co-hosting this week's session with my colleague, Nathaniel Hudson. Good morning, Nathaniel.
Good morning, Tom. Nice to see you.
Good to have you with us. You're one of our directors of member services, and you'll be facilitating the conversation with our special guests today that we'll bring on in just a moment. But I have a few other quick announcements to make. As the name implies, this call series is called Next Practices Weekly. We meet every Thursday at the same time for those that are new, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. We run for just about exactly an hour. You see the guests we'll have coming up on June 6th, 13th, and 20th from some truly great organizations like Krispy Kreme and Schwann's Company. That one brings back some nostalgia from my childhood. And we're also going to have a book author and thought leader, Matt Bean, a professor from University of California. He gave a very provocative talk on AI and its use in organizations at our conference back in March. And so we're lucky to have him joining us in this call series on June 13th as well. We do host a little bit less frequently than weekly, but about once a month, some similar sessions to these for our colleagues in the APAC and EMEA regions. So if you're a global organization and have some workers some HR leaders that would appreciate similar insights to what you get on Next Practices Weekly, maybe they're located in Europe or Middle East or the Asia Pacific region, just go out to our website or scan the QR code there that you see on the screen. Please share this information with those colleagues. We have these sessions at different times that are more appropriate for their time zone. And we have similar guests that we have on this Thursday call series, so covering a lot of the same topics. Also wanted to note, we just released a major new study. The report is titled The Team Network Effect: How Precision Collaboration Unleashes Productivity. Members can download the full report now. Non-members can download the executive brief. Zeta's putting the links to those over in the chat. This is a very interesting study. It wasn't just sort of yet another study on sort of basic points about good teamwork and good collaboration. We really wanted to dive in to look at the network effects that imply, that drive whether some teams perform better than others. Our two of our researchers, Rob Cross and Catherine Brecken, led the work on this study because today teams are really the primary vehicle for creating value in organizations. Yet, I think that most organizations, recognition and rewards and performance management is very much structured around individuals still. And so why aren't we looking at how to boost input and output from from that team level. So the study had 4 key findings. The report and the executive brief, go through those in various levels of depth. And in the report, we also outline a path to increase productivity by up to 39% by really focusing on this team network effect. So again, members can download the full report now. There's also a collection of tools that have been created. Shout out to my colleague, Judy Elbers, who worked with Catherine and Rob on some of those. And as I said, non-members can at least glean the key insights from the executive brief. Also, stay tuned because we will have Rob and Catherine on Next Practices Weekly in a few weeks to go through some of the highlights from this study as well. With that, I'm going to turn things over to you, Nathaniel, to introduce our special guest today and facilitate that conversation.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you all here today and glad to introduce you to the children's team or part of the children's team. But I think they can do it better themselves. So Laurin, Jes, Greg, Laurin, we'll start with you. Could you just briefly introduce yourself and tell us your role at Children's Minnesota?
Yeah, good morning, Nathaniel, and thank you. I'm once again, everybody, Laurin Cathey. I'm Senior Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer here at Children's Minnesota. I've got the pleasure of working with both Greg and Jes as they help me shape HR strategy and operations across our organization. And I've been with Children's almost 5 years now.
Thank you, Laurin. Jes?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Jes Beck. I'm the Director of Organization Development and Learning here at Children's, and I've been with the organization for 4.5 years now.
Thank you, Jes. And Greg?
Yeah, Greg Johnson, pronouns he, him, Senior Director of Talent Strategy. I echo Laurin. I get the privilege of working with these two exemplary HR leaders, and I've been with the organization 5 years come July.
Well, thank you all for that. Greg, we'll stick with you. Can you tell us a little bit more about Children's Minnesota?
Yeah, and I'll get to some additional context, but let's start with a fun video that we have teed up that will show a little bit about Children's Minnesota, and then I'll add some additional context.
Welcome to Children's Minnesota.
G57.
We got a winner! Winner!
Yeah,
And Nathaniel, do you folks have the video? Do you want me to?
Hey guys, how can I help? And action.
Let him go! Yeah!
Hi.
Hi.
Cool. Well, that looks super fun, Greg. I mean, obviously, Children's Hospital has a special mission. So can you tell us a little bit more about who you serve and what you do?
Yeah, appreciate it. No, our mission is really to champion the health needs of the children and families. And that's our utmost commitment, is to improving children's health by providing the highest quality family-centered care, which is advanced through research and education. And our vision is really to be every family's essential partner in raising healthier children. So that's our mission and vision as an organization. I am really excited and proud to say this is our 100-year anniversary. So we started in a small little house in St. Paul, Minnesota, and here we are 100 years later, continuing to serve the organization. And through those 100 years, we have been and continue to be an independent, freestanding, nonprofit pediatric healthcare system. We're one of the largest freestanding pediatric systems in the United States. We have 2 hospitals, 9 primary care clinics, 7 rehab sites, and 9 specialty care sites. Our hospitals, both campuses, we have one located in St. Paul, Minnesota, and the other one is located in Minneapolis. Between the 2 hospitals, we have 451 beds, which places us in the top 10 of all children's hospitals in the country. Yeah, so that's a little bit about us. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that, Greg. And I know that Minnesota has a lot of healthcare options and facilities, but I'm curious, what you do to capture the market in Minnesota.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The Twin Cities are a number of healthcare facilities, and some pretty well-known ones to boot. So at Children's Minnesota, we capture the market within our 7-county metro area here in the Twin Cities. We lead the market for acute pediatric care. We've had steady growth since 2019. So in 2019, we had about 61.8% market growth. And then at the close of 2023, we landed at 65% of the market share. And that growth is really because we have a strong commitment to excellence and putting kids first, which we can see on the slide with notable honors. I'm not going to talk about all of these, but just 2 maybe that I'll highlight. We are the first and only hospital system in the state of Minnesota and 13th center in the nation to be verified as a level 1 children's surgery center by the American College of Surgeons. And another honorable mention is we were just recognized and received redesignation for 2024 into 2025 as a leader in LGBTQ healthcare by the Human Rights Campaigns. So, that really, because we're there for the communities, that, and we've got the notable honors, it helps, the community make decisions to come to Children's Minnesota when they need healthcare services.
Yeah, it's nice to have your mission and vision be validated by these national organizations, and those are big redesignations and accolades you've gotten. So that's really exciting to get the justification of your mission and vision. I'm curious, you touched on the diversity part a little bit. Can you maybe expand on that, how diversity ties into how you run your organization and your business?
Yeah, certainly. Diversity, equity, inclusion is vital to our mission. Our kid experts, so our workforce, advocates for the diverse and underserved populations, and we do that in a multifaceted approach, starting with our legislators all the way through developing programs tailored to the needs of our communities, such as a gender and mental health program. Of course, all of our talent practices, from recruitment to retirement, have DE&I threaded through our fabric. And then we are very intentional to work on dismantling inequities within our system, within the industry, and the communities in which we serve. And that really, if we go to the kind of the patient population overview, this slide really speaks for itself. So through these various interactions, we have facilitated 120,000 interactions with patients' families where we had to provide interpretive services, whether that was verbal, in person, or written communications. And that spanned across 68 different languages. So, our communities that rely on us are heavily diverse, which means everything that we do has to have diversity, equity, and inclusion woven through our fabric.
Well, thank you for that background, Greg. I appreciate the approach where you're not just treating patients as they walk through the door. It's really holistic and through the community and understanding who your community is, all of Minnesota, which is doesn't just look one way or operate one way and has many diverse needs. So thank you for that. I imagine Laurin leading a dynamic organization, not just on the HR side, but just on the medical side, the legislative side. There's a lot of dynamic leaders. Can you talk a little bit about the executive team and how you operate and where we've come to for the Leadership Academy, the impetus for that?
Yeah, Nathaniel, I'll be happy to. And very excited this morning to share a little bit about our origin story, because the more I talk about it, there's some key reminders in there for me as well. So I always appreciate revisiting it. But to give everyone a little context, the leadership team at Children's Minnesota today is made up of 9 individuals. So we've got the CEO and his 8 direct reports. Of that 9-member team, 7 of us started in 2019 or later. And I don't think I have to remind this audience what happened in 2020. So, we were a group of new leaders facing what was quite potentially the organization's greatest crisis in its 100-year history. So that we had some very daunting challenges in front of us, and we had to wrestle with the reality, Nathaniel, that we didn't really know each other that well. We were pretty new as a group. So the origins of the Leadership Academy really was our journey to really grow as a leadership team, learn ways that we could leverage each other's talents and support each other through some challenges. And that became known for us in simple terms as having each other's back, because it was quite more than, oh yeah, we're just going to verbally express support. We had to show up in times where either our new strategy or a particular portion of it might be facing some very strong headwinds, and be able to, as a leadership team, show alignment there. So things we learned through our own journey is that this alignment toward a single important goal was critical, but a common language was necessary to get to that common goal. We saw that as critical, and you'll see that in components of our Leadership Academy, getting everybody to speak the same language. So when you're bringing forth recommendations, you don't sound inaudible to everybody else on the call. But what was really important for us as leaders, and I ask everybody, if you don't hear a lot of what I say today, listen to this. It was important for us as leaders to learn to rumble together, and really hold each other accountable. I think one of the things when you are a new leadership team, you tend to be accommodating toward each other, very supportive of each other. And so somebody brings forth an idea and you see a lot of head nodding without real rigorous or critical conversation about, does it really work? Can we operationalize it? Those types of things. And so we really had to get comfortable with that and understand it was a necessary part of our pathway forward in order to be successful. So as we learn these lessons, it helped us become great enterprise leaders instead of fantastic functional leaders, Nathaniel. And then that's really what we're trying to bring to the Leadership Academy. It's not only about leadership development, it's about changing your way of thinking. It's easy to tell a person to think differently, but you have to really give examples and show ideas and ways to think differently so that we can really move the entire organization. And that's where I give a lot of credit to Jes Beck and team, because we had this great experience as a ELT. We saw benefits for it, but we really needed to, for our own sustainability, be able to roll it forward, take it to the next level of leaders in our organization. And that's where the real hard work started. And Jes and Greg were the champions of getting that done within our organization.
Well, what I appreciate is that, COVID, being a new leader in COVID, you're being thrown into the deep end, right? But yourself and the rest of the leadership team or executive team said, hey, do you know what? We need to go slow to go fast. And we really need to foundationalize and align ourselves before we can do this for the rest of the organization. And then saying, not only is it important for us to be on the same page, but it's important for everyone else in the organization to be on the same page. Was that a pretty, was everyone on the executive team pretty aligned with that? Or were there some opportunities and challenges in rolling it out beyond the executive team to the rest of the leadership?
Yeah, lots of opportunities, both within the team and as we began to roll it. I think no one on this call will be surprised to hear that an effort of this magnitude requires a great change management element to it. So, that was important for us. So within the discipline of change management, or the ProSci method that we use, we've come to understand, you should expect resistance, Nathan, at certain places. And, once again, in our industry, we've got unexpected headwinds that we're going to see too. So I think understanding that that's going to happen, and really as you're doing that planning and alignment, making sure that your compelling message is resonating with multiple audiences, helps you deal with that as you go through. So, certainly saw some resistance. We needed to anticipate it. Once again, we needed to have each other's back as we dealt with it. But then more importantly, it's just hearsay or mouth service without results. So we certainly needed to show those along the way. And I think as we talk more about the Leadership Academy, you'll hear how we're getting a return on investment from the participants who are going through it. I think that's the secret sauce that continues to make it effective for us. And I'll say one more thing about resistance, because the obvious one is the financial challenge that a program like this may bring. Greg used the phrase intentional earlier. We had to be very intentional and very thoughtful about this. This was a commitment the organization was making to what we hope would be the next generation of leaders. So it could not be a start and stop process. We plan to take it to every top leader across our organization, which at that time was about 125 different leaders. And so we had to plan it out over a 5 cohort rotation, with the expenses and the professional commitments that came along with it. And I'm happy to say in doing that early, we see great participation in it. We see nice growth from it. And we're also seeing the benefits of that investment, because we're reaching a point where now we've got enough people trained in it where they're coming back to help us facilitate. And so therefore cost is coming down year to year with it as well. So those are some of the things we just wanted to share about the journey and where it's gotten us to date, Nathaniel.
Thank you, Lauren.
Before we bring Jes on, I just wanted to note both Lauren and Greg, you're getting some love here in the chat for many of the things you've shared about Children's Minnesota, but also some of the specific points you've been making, Lauren. So appreciate that. And just want to remind everyone, please use the chat to ask questions. We're going to dig in now into the actual Academy program. So go ahead, Nathaniel.
Thanks, Tom. So Jes, it sounds like the executive team, says, okay, we need to do this. We need to figure out how to rumble together. And it's not like you can just flip the switch. So I'm curious how your team and you viewed, okay, we got to make this academy. How did you parse out the objectives, the structure? Take me through your process?
Yeah, happy to. So we had a big endeavor to go into, and I love the comment about every day we're hustling and we hustle together. We leaned into that. How do we hustle together in collaboration with several partners? So we worked with our executive coaches through MDA and I5 Consulting to really understand what it was that was happening with ELT that was working, that we wanted to draw from. We took a look at our talent assessment and calibration data to say, okay, what are some of the clear gaps that we're seeing over and over in our leadership population? And then also just looking at how our leaders deliver on strategy, and what are some of the themes that we were experiencing there. So we developed a hypothesis statement that was, if we establish Children's Minnesota Leadership Academy, we would be able to address the development needs and cultivate a community of interconnected leaders that are really equipped to drive strategic alignment and engage our teams effectively across our organization, which I wish I would have had Rob Cross's research when we were defining that, because I think the Academy, what we've actually seen from it, really reinforces everything that was found in that report. So our objectives, as we endeavored, to Laurin's point about it wasn't just about skill development, as it was about a mental shift. We wanted to provide both horizontal and vertical development opportunities for these leaders. Fostering that network was a non-negotiable. It wasn't a side effect. It was something that we were very intentional about. And of course, we still wanted to offer that skill development, all in service of breaking down silos and preparing leaders for refined expectations. Because as our executive leadership team was really storming and norming and forming and getting their bearings, they were recognizing that we needed to shift our expectations of leaders as an organization. Now, we did have some risk and challenges along the way. So we mentioned the financial constraints. We had staffing shortages. We had a work stoppage. We had a lot of competing priorities. But to Laurin's point, we did align that we were going to get 150 of our director and above population through the academy over the course of 5 cohorts in an accelerated fashion, doing about 3 cohorts per year, actually sometimes 4, depending on the timing of it, and really try to get them all through. So we tried to roll out August of 2022. We did actually end up delaying until September, but we launched cohort 1 in September of 2022.
Cool. Thank you for laying out the blueprint, and we'll dive into the details in a little bit, but I'm just curious. I think this is a great time to ask the audience, poll the audience. For folks that have been part of leadership development programs, either going through it or designing it, what have you found to be most impactful? I believe there's a poll coming up on the screen, and I always like to ask the presenters to read the mind of the audience. Jes, what do you think the top answer is going to be?
Gosh, I go between executive leadership engaging and really being a part of it, and the peer learning and networking, just based on my own experience.
Yeah.
And this is a multiple response question. We asked in the question if you could pick, 1 or 2 maybe of these. Again, the question being, what components of a leadership development program have you found to be most impactful, either at your current organization or maybe prior organizations? The votes are coming in here. I'm going to give it another 5 seconds or so, and then we'll reveal the results.
Well, what I love too, Jes, the network that you build is oftentimes that's informal network, but it was intentional and part of the design of the Leadership Academy, is saying, hey, we have people in functions that are in the legislative branch or doing lobbying. We have folks that are doing other community outreach or just providing medical services in the building. And we need to make sure that those people are all speaking a common language and connected to each other, because if they're happening disparately, that's not really the unified vision that Children's is, right? So
Absolutely.
So here we have the results, and you see the top 3 response options got the most votes: executive leadership engagement in the program and even involvement in teaching coming in number 1. I'd like to call that out, because over the past 10 years or so, we've done multiple studies where that was deemed the next practice, particularly involving leaders as teachers. That's come up in multiple I4CP studies. So great to see so many people leaning in and finding great value in that. Hands-on experiential learning and peer learning and networking were the next 2 top responses. Jes, would love to hear your reactions to this, and Laurin and Greg as well, if you have any thoughts.
I think that executive level involvement is so critical. And when I saw coaching as, one of the side effects, I'm like, you know what, as long as you've got that peer learning, you've already got coaching ingrained, especially when you've got those executives. So I think obviously they're all interrelated, but I love the executive level engagement in there. And I, of course, love seeing that peer learning structure. Laurin, what would you add?
Yeah, just, it's interesting how you distinguish those. And I actually spun it a little differently. I'm a big fan of coaching. And for me, in my learning style, which is very much hands-on, coaching is a tremendous reinforcer for me after hands-on learning. And one of the things that we are doing as a leadership team, our big focus this year is to not lead or dictate as leaders, but we're moving from leaders as doer to leaders as coaches. So coaching really resonates with me right now because it's central to what we're working on from an organizational perspective. But I agree, all of these are interconnected and very valuable.
Yeah, I agree. I'll just add quickly on the hands-on experiential learning, and someone asked a question around what are some examples. I was also a part of this development program in our inaugural class, so I'll speak to it as a participant as well. We had a couple simulations. One was a change management simulation that got us really energized and passionate, and really led to some collaborative, safe space simulation exercises around change and looking at potentially having to make tough people decisions in that simulation. Another hands-on experiential learning was applying our value capture continuous improvement initiative methodology, because in order to be a highly successful leader at Children's, you have to understand continuous improvement and how it relates to our strategic initiatives. And so we had a day-long hands-on activity with getting folks comfortable with value capture, continuous improvement.
Great.
But now, Nathaniel, I would be remiss if I let us go on without calling this out. Assessments may have come to the bottom of the list here, but there was tremendous value for us. Our assessments show that the majority of our leaders were very altruistic in their, way they related to others and how they thought about business. And so that was important for us to understand, because we would see some natural resistance when we talk to them about, operating margin and trying to do things to drive revenue. So, we needed to help understand, we needed to better understand that was part of their natural makeup, and that we needed to give them space so that wouldn't compete with the desire or the need for the organization to still make money. So assessments can be key to unlocking some true potential within your organization as well.
For sure. And it's not an either or thing, right? It's just finding the right balance, seeing what strengths are, seeing where opportunities are, and being able to know yourself as an individual in service of the greater organization too, right? Jes, I'm curious if you can dig a little bit deeper into what does the individual path of a learner look like, or as the cohort look like, and share some other exercises and activities you did.
Yeah, absolutely. So we based everything on a neuroscience approach. So everything that we just had in that poll, right, it's all backed in the neuroscience space. So that was really our critical component. We bucketed it into 3 areas. So we were going to do individual assessment and development planning to really help our leaders understand who they are and how they might show up. So starting with that self first. And we were going to have in-person live learning sessions. These are full day events, take them out of their typical element. I'll talk a little bit more about them here momentarily. And then also small group growth accountability teams, because that's going to provide that accountability, that peer networking and coaching that dives deeper into what you would get out of that live learning session. So we felt that these 3 structures were going to really maximize learning retention, ensure application, and make sure that we have that community that's being built all throughout. So we can take a look at these a little bit more deeply if we move to our individual and assessment planning process. So we leverage basically personality and motive inventories. Leveraging Hogan assessments was really our piece. And we coupled that with a 90-minute in-depth feedback session that also leveraged 360 feedback. So this allowed the participant to really dive deep in a one-to-one conversation with a coach to understand how they're showing up and where they might have the biggest opportunities for growth throughout the academy. And they did this before they would even enter the academy itself. And then once they've gone through that coaching assessment, then they moved into the live learning sessions themselves. And so we have 10 of these across a full year program. And if we kind of take a look at what did this look like, we had some critical components that are always present in our live learning sessions to foster the socialization. So we always fed people, right? What better way to build a community than sharing a meal together? So we always fed people. We also started off with centering because we know that our leaders are tasked with so many other priorities. If we wanted them to really focus on their day, we needed to give them an opportunity to set their work aside and really dig in. And socialization. So every single session, we provide, here's a great happy hour spot and specific instructions on where to go, just to promote that. And if that weren't enough from a socialization perspective, we would also have specific venues, like we leverage Pinstripes in Edina as one of our locations, because then the group can play bocce ball together, sit around a campfire outside on the deck, that sort of thing. So we also incorporate it directly into the design as well. In the course of a day, we weave in our content threads. Laurin mentioned that we needed our teams to better understand the financial interplay with our strategy. We needed to really upskill people from a financial acumen perspective and stop the rhetoric of mission versus money and turn it into mission and money, or funding our mission is the other way that we like to talk about it. We also wanted to thread in continuous improvement and innovation to what Greg spoke to earlier, talent management and the role of a leader in being a talent manager across the organization at a systems level, and then that collaboration and ethical leadership. In order to keep costs down, we work with partners around the Twin Cities. Several of them are donors to our foundation to secure gifted venue space. So you can see a few examples here on this slide. And then that other component that I mentioned is really bringing in expert guest speakers. So we had that listed there. And what we find is by putting a sprinkling of expert guest speakers into these sessions, it brings in other voices and perspectives that really help leaders solidify the content that we're bringing forward. So they've got executive leadership participation. Every executive is assigned to a session and leads part of that session, whether or not it's a sticky issue that they're asking the cohorts to address and come up with a solution for, or it's just diving into the content itself. Our executives are involved. Our guest speakers are involved. We've got great facilitation across the board. So that's a little bit on our live learning session. And then our third component.
Before we go on to that, the growth of accountability teams, I just wanted to call out a couple things here. I think it's wonderful that you've got the different venues to mix up, where people will be learning. I think that no doubt helps with retention and so on over time. I like the fact that you've got the informal components emphasized so much so that they're actually in the spectrum there at the bottom, the food at the beginning being a key part, and then socialization as well. I think those kind of things are often discounted in terms of just how powerful they can be in these programs. The one that you didn't mention, I'm curious about, because in my experience, and working with a lot of other facilitators, I come from an L&D background, so I hear this all the time. Getting any adult learners to do homework consistently is very difficult, and I would assume it's even more so for busy leaders at any leadership level. So I see in that second to last chevron there, review and homework. Can you tell a little bit, what's your secrets to getting them to do some of the homework?
The key for our homework is to actually follow up on it, right? So if we assign homework or pre-work for a live session, we have to revisit the results of it. And if we do, we see really great participation with it. The other component is sometimes that homework is actually leading into the growth accountability teams. And so that small group setting, you can't really hide on whether or not you did your homework. And so that just fosters more accountability. And then the last thing that we did to make sure that homework was beneficial for the academy and would be completed is we ask after every session as part of our evaluation, was the pre-work or homework for this session effective and helpful in making you understand the concepts more fully? And then we're constantly reevaluating whether or not we got the right work in place.
Great. Those are all great tips. And one of them was a nice lead into that third aspect here, the growth accountability team. So let me move on to that slide.
Yeah. So our other secret sauce, if you will, and man, was it hard to determine the right name to call this small group, is a growth accountability team. So this is 5 or 6 leaders from a cohort where we are really looking for them to engage in deeper dialogue and discussion on the concept. So what are their experiences that they're having? What are the challenges that they're experiencing as they try to employ some of the new skills and competencies and activities that we're asking them to do? We want our peers to really be sounding boards, offering that peer coaching. And I mentioned accountability, that's huge. But one of the things that this does is it brings that deeper level of connection for these participants. So after cohort 1, and actually now after cohort 2, we've seen many of these growth accountability teams continue forward even without the academy experience. They want to stay connected. They want to continue to learn and grow together as a small team. And the beautiful thing about that is they no longer have a coach. So throughout the academy, our growth accountability teams are guided by a coach who is there to help them and see them through. That also reports back to inform our live learning sessions, but they don't have a coach afterwards. And that's where we've really seen the value shine. They want to continue on with these well beyond the academy experience.
That's great, Jess. I appreciate that. And what I really appreciate too is really, we saw some messages in the chat, just having accountability people to go along the journey with. Often leadership can be a lonely experience, but if you're growing with other people and you can, I'm with Laurin too, I'm a hands-on learner, right? So if I'm doing it by myself, I can feel like, I don't know where my touch points are, but when you have folks that are going through the journey with you and the growth with you, that's really powerful. So I appreciate that. Did you want to talk about the roadmap a little bit?
Yeah, so we have already mentioned a few times our focus on continuous improvement. The academy is no different. Cohort 1 to cohort 2 to cohort 3 to cohort 4 now. None of them have been the same exact experience. We have partnered again with both MDI and I5 Consulting, and you can see kind of an overview of how all of the elements I just spoke to really lean in together. But the one thing that I would note from a roadmap perspective is our transition from cohort 3 to cohort 4 has been with a greater emphasis on a new tactic that we're leveraging to align our leadership, which is leader success profiles. So we've redesigned our entire curriculum to really better support that and better integrate those red threads going forward. So you can see a sampling of what we do here. But after every session, it's all about the debrief. What are we going to do differently next time? And aligning it to the needs of the cohort. As we go deeper into the organization, the needs of these leaders is greatly different from one to the next. So our academy is never baked. It is always in flux.
Like that. One thing that I imagine is not in flux is making sure you're measuring success and an ROI, right? And especially, obviously Children's is a nonprofit, but I see this with members that are for-profit too, that, budgets are lean. People want to be agile. We want to make sure if we're going to invest in something, we're getting some return out of it. And that return could be financial, but it could also be institutional. So I'm just curious how Children's views success and how you measure it.
Yeah. So with the Academy, we've made a lot of strides in creating that socially strong network of leaders. So we've had 113 of our 150 leaders start. So that was one measurement, right? Like, how are we benchmarking against our original plan of 150? We have an additional 30 who are set to start in August. So that's great. Within our sessions, we do have a 90% or higher participation rate, along with our growth accountability team meetings. So our post-session surveys end up averaging about 4.47 out of 5 in terms of net promoter scores, quality, all of those different components. So our participants really are highly engaged and satisfied. But I also want to note that one of the reasons for that is we actually articulate that it's a 100% participation expectation to join. So when you join, you are signing up for 100% participation for a full year, with the notion that we recognize you may miss a session because life happens and things come up. But we do truly actually exit individuals who can't maintain their full participation and attendance to keep that up. We also have a 94% retention rate among our participants, with 7 resignations year to date. That's across all 4 cohorts. So that's a very, very strong number. And one of the things that we've recognized in talking to some of those resignations as they've exited their leadership role is that they recognize that they just weren't bought in to being a leader anymore, right? So part of this is really understanding who you are as a leader and who you want to be as a leader. So in a way, it is still a success, as we've seen that, because we've seen people recognize the leadership just isn't for them. So that's beautiful. You can see that of our post-program evaluations for cohort 1 and 2, 100% of our participants cohort 1, 100% would recommend this program. 94% agreed that it was a powerful learning experience. And across the board, in terms of our 360 assessments, we saw incremental growth in every single area that we measured. So that was huge and powerful. Our data does indicate, and this Laurin spoke to a little bit earlier, we still have a very big need to focus on leader as coach. So growing and developing other leaders and really spending time in that space continues to be a challenge. So as we're redesigning curriculum going forward, we're really emphasizing that particular piece. I'll note that at the bottom of the slide, you can also see several quotes from our participants. We had mentioned assessments, and the assessments within our academy, the way that we know that this has been powerful is through some of these quotes. After debriefing the assessment results as a large group and understanding them, these leaders are more inclined to see the other person as human. Wow, I didn't realize that the way I showed up isn't the way that you think. So next time I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to bring data to this conversation, because you need the data, I need the story, right? And so we're seeing them collaborate and interact very differently, which has been just incredible to see as a whole. So I love this kind of quote too. The last thing that I'll share on measuring success is, in talking with participants about to start the academy, I always ask, what have you heard? What are you excited about? And one of our cohort 3 participants before joining in said, I'm really nervous. And I said, okay, wow, that's great. Nervousness can be a sign that you're about to embrace change. Wonderful. Tell me more. He said, well, it seems kind of like a cult. And I will say that was like the best thing ever to hear for me, because that meant that we're changing our language, we're changing the way we show up. They're seeing that shared accountability among the other team members, and they have also demonstrated just that same level of an engagement as they've gone through the academy. So it really is bringing us full circle outside of the academy, and changes happening across our organization. And that's been the biggest impact. Now,
it's a funny thing to hear that, but we need, the first 4 letters of culture are CULT, cult. So I think there is a strong connection there.
Isn't there? Yeah.
And Laurin, I saw you hopped off mute. Did you want to add some stuff too?
Yeah, I was just going to make a couple of comments. I was just thrilled that we did have hard measures and ways to gauge the success of the program. But, with most things that you can measure, there are also some anecdotal benefits that we get. Just called out one, at the bottom of the screen, that second comment from the very right, I can do more now that I know some of my peers. We were just incredibly surprised as we started putting people through the cohorts to hear how many people were 15-year veterans of the organization, but had never met each other face to face. And on our continuous improvement journey, what we talk about is real-time problem solving, and that requires you to be able to pull help chains in different areas of the organization. So meeting those people gave humanized the help chain some so they could pull on it much more quicker. But the other big benefit for us was Jes does a session where, the participants really dig into what's the big thing that they're getting stuck on, the big impediment in their way. And for 2 years, the big impediment that we heard, hearing that firsthand as a leader allowed us to do something about it. In year one, they said, we don't know you guys as ELT. You kind of go away in this room and you come back out and say, here. And so they really wanted more time with us. And so we built that in to the other sessions and we saw immediate rewards from it. And now the second big boulder that we hear about, and everybody let me know in the chat what you're doing on this one. They say our culture is too meeting heavy. We had too many meetings. What can we do about that? How are we going to streamline it? But it's just great to go into the conversation and know that they feel comfortable enough to say, we could be so much better if we could address this. So I just want to say that in addition to those great measures, the feedback line is so much more open now, Nathaniel, that it's helping us every day just deal with problems.
Yeah, 100%. And measuring just the communication or the fact that you're not siloed anymore. You can't just put a quantify saying, hey, I know I can call Laurin and Laurin can help me with A, B, and C, or I know I can call Jes, and we already have that relationship, and we can rumble together, right, if we need to as well, if we have competing priorities too. Greg, I saw you came off mute too. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll add a little bit about our clinician workforce and their leadership journey. So it's rather common to be a high performing doctor, individual contributor, and then jump instantly to a medical director without supervision, stepstones in between. And so that's been a real value add for that community of medical directors, clinical leaders who haven't had that traditional leadership stepping stone like a lot of us in support functions have had. Now, there's a gap in knowledge, skills, so forth, but that's the intention of the program. And I think it is, it's giving them a different perception on their value as leaders in the organization. Like it's improving that perception.
Cool. Thank you, Greg. Tom, I know I've been looking at the chat. I see there's some questions in there. We've addressed a fair amount of them. Was there anything that we have not addressed that you saw?
Yeah, there was a couple of questions. Let me just roll up here. So maybe Jes, if you could address these, and then we'll close out with sort of the overall value. And I think we had one last video to share. One question from Diane that I don't think was addressed yet was, who are the coaches? Are they internal org development folks, or do you bring in external coaches, or maybe a mix of the two? And are they pure coaches or more just group facilitators?
Yeah, great question. A mixed bag, to be completely honest with you. So for cohorts 1 through 3, we wholeheartedly leverage external coaches. And from a GAT perspective, they generally are more on a facilitation basis. They leverage the principles of coaching in the practice, but they're all executive coaches as well in their side jobs, if you will. For cohorts 4 and beyond, we are working on sunsetting our external partnerships as we bring this fully in-house for the ongoing maintenance of the program. And so my senior consultants and I are also engaging in coach partnerships for cohort 4 and taking on our own coaching assignments for cohorts 5 and beyond, so that we can just minimize the financial restraints of the academy program itself.
And then let me bring in Rob's question here that just came in. Is there a plan to broaden this? I think the audience for this was director and above. Is there a plan to broaden this below that level?
Yeah, so this year, one of our goals is not to broaden Leadership Academy. We do plan to keep it for directors and above, and go to a 1 cohort per year maintenance plan. But for our managers and supervisor population, we recognize that there's an incredible need there as well. So we're envisioning a program for them right now.
All right, so we've only got a couple minutes left. Just if you could sum up, just speak to the overall value here, and then we'll play this last testimonial video.
I could sum it up, but honestly, the testimonial really speaks for itself. So I'll let Mariana Quiroga, our Senior Director of Marketing, just share her experience instead. And I welcome any questions from folks along the way.
Great, thank you. All right, let me see if I can get this to play.
First and foremost, get to see the issues that all my different colleagues across different teams have and work on them together. So I have been on a path of developing my own leadership style for a long time. I've worked in different ways, but here I get to do it with other people and see the issues through their lenses and see what they deal with, which is very, very different. My role is in marketing. I'm working now with surgeons. I'm working with people in operations and supply chain, people that are doing the security of the buildings of the hospital. So think through the processes and the issues through their eyes and solve problems as a broader leadership team is not something I expected as part of the program, but it's the most valuable part for me. First and
Nice.
Cool. Well, I want to thank Laurin and Jes and Greg for sharing the Leadership Academy journey at Children's. I think it's when I first saw you present this, I was amazed at this nonprofits sometimes have a bad rap for not being accountable enough or focusing on margins, and you really did a great job of de-siloing the organization, getting those facilitating those network connections and getting everyone aligned and on the same page. So I think there's a lot to learn here, a lot of great lessons, and like you said, Jes, aligns with a lot of the research that I4CP is putting out too. So I really appreciate your time today sharing the journey and successes, and if just looking at the chat, it looks like the audience got a lot too. So thank you so much.
Well, we appreciate the opportunity to share the story.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so I'll echo that. Thank you, Greg, Laurin, and Jes. As we close out, just a quick reminder that all I4CP Next Practices weekly sessions are available for HRCI and SHRM recertification credit hours. So if you have a cert from either HRCI or SHRM, just jot down the relevant program ID or activity ID that you see here on the screen and that Zeta has put in the chat. Otherwise, hope everyone has a great rest of your week and weekend coming up. We look forward to seeing you next week, where we'll have an HR executive from Krispy Kreme as our special guest. So we're looking forward to that. Thanks again, Nathaniel. Great job. Thanks, Greg, Jes, and Laurin. And we'll see everyone again next week. Bye-bye now.
Thanks, everyone.